Hi, I'm Tammy Fontana with All in the Family Counselling Centre Pte. Limited. I am talking today about when one person in the relationship says, I don't want to have sex, and the other person does. Um, what does this mean, and how does sex therapy fit into this? So, I'm a clinically trained therapist with clinical specialization in sex and sexuality, or sex therapist. And people, I have to use this language because people, this is how they identify, but I'm a therapist. I have no problem in dealing with sex. I'm clinically trained. And a lot of therapists or marriage and family therapists do not have this clinical training, and so they avoid it, or they're practicing out of scope of competency. And so for me, it's just all therapy. It's not like, oh, this is a marriage thing or a communication thing. We can't deal with it because it's a sex thing. Because sex is just another aspect of a relationship. It involves communication, boundaries, conflict, all the things that affect other relationships. And one of the bigger conflicts is when one person declares, I do not want to have sex. Right? And it could be because they just don't want to have sex. And they'll say, I don't know why, or because they'll say, I have low sex drive, or they'll just say, I don't want to have sex, and the other person does. And this creates a huge conflict, especially because the couple usually in these situations have a monogamy agreement. And so people will come into me wondering how sex therapy is going to help them in a case where one person really doesn't want to have sex and the other person does. And one of the things, I want to help people to understand is that the person who doesn't want to have sex usually has really good reasons why. Sometimes they know about it and it's deeply hidden and they're too afraid to discuss why they don't want to have sex. Other times it's more buried even in them. They don't want to do the thinking around it and the self-reflection to figure out what is really going on, and it's complicated. But most of the time people have really good reasons why they don't want to have sex. And one of the things that happens is because, one, people don't understand what is sex therapy, or just therapy, and they're really focused on the doing. There's a huge amount of resistance for the person who doesn't want to have sex to come in and do therapy. Because in their mind, and often in their partners, they have this idea that me and the person who want to have sex are going to kind of team up and, force the person who doesn't want to have sex to do it. And they think the sex therapy is all going to be around doing, 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 doing. And this couldn't be further from the truth. Because as I tell people, the most important sexual organ in the body is the mind. And if we have any part of it that gets in the way of the mind, sex won't happen. So sex therapy is not an engineering problem where we're going to engineer doing solutions to make somebody do what they want to do. The other thing is there's this kind of underlying thing that there's something wrong with the person who doesn't want to have sex, and there's something right with the person who does want to have sex, and that me and the person who wants to have sex, we're going to team up and fix the broken, non-wanting person to have sex. Again, this is not what sex therapy is. It is not me here to force people to do anything. If I had that superpower where I could make people do whatever they want, I would not be doing therapy. I'd be locked away somewhere in a governmental agency, very, very rich, making people do things they didn't want to do. I would be a superpower. I don't have those powers. Rather, what it is there's a lot of usually complicated factors going on. And when people are not having sex, or when one person does not want to have sex, especially when there was a point in the relationship at the beginning where they were sexual and then it drops off, often it's around the birth of one or two children, life changes, or over time as the relationship keeps evolving, the person wants sex less and less. Usually the lack of sex desire or drive is more of a symptom than the problem. And this is where people get distracted because sex is so concrete. So when somebody declares they don't want to have sex, it's a very slow process of, one, I have to build a relationship with the couple. I have to get more of an assessment and understanding. They have to get to know me. I have to teach them about therapy, and then we have to start the process of figuring out what's actually going on in the relationship, and or what's going on in that person's life, because there's usually really good reasons why people don't want to have sex. One, there can be biological reasons, physical pain problems, hormonal issues, so we always want to rule those things out. Once those are ruled out, usually there's something more in the functioning of the relationship, where the person who doesn't want to have sex, it could be because they don't feel comfortable in their body, may have gained weight, or they don't feel good. The other issues that can arise is the dynamic between the couple, where there are power discrepancy, power issues, who is in control, who gets to decide how things work. This will usually happen after the birth of a child, where there's an unfair distribution of workload, unresolved hurts, unresolved accumulative hurts that have not been addressed, where the person who doesn't want to have sex is continually being hurt or disappointed by their partner. Not in relationship ending ways. I always say it's more like by death by a thousand cuts, where they're constantly being disappointed or hurt in various ways, where the person says they're going to do something and they don't do it, where the person behaves in very selfish and self-serving ways and they're not aware of it, where the person often has to have things their way. They say or behave in poor ways, the way they manage the money, the way they manage their anger, the way they help out or don't help out with the children, or the distribution of the housework. All of these things can create complications or difficulty to discuss, and when they're not resolved, they lead to hurt, resentment. There can be feelings of betrayal, and when the couple doesn't know how to resolve those outside of the bedroom, they undermine sexual intimacy in the bedroom. And a lot of people use this euphemism of intimacy in exchange for sex, and I always say that isn't what it is. Sex is the physical act. Intimacy is when I share with you who I am and how things make me feel. So sex can be anything but intimate. It can be very non-intimate. The intimacy comes from how we share what we like, how things make us feel, whether that's, hey, when you do this sexual move on me, it makes me feel this way, or hey, when you don't help out with the kids, I feel really hurt or disrespected, or when you don't call when you're going to be late, I feel really disrespected, or you keep doing all these surprise unplanned purchases that are impacting our budget, and I feel really hurt and betrayed. When we don't know how to discuss these issues, they affect sex because they lead to resentment, hurt, betrayal. I don't feel accepted or loved by you. And so these become very complicated in figuring out how this works, and that takes time because a lot of people are so focused on the doing aspect of the sex, and the person who is not getting sex is in a lot of pain and they're suffering, and they want to maintain their monogamy marriage vows. So by the time people are coming into me, it's often at quite a pressure point. They want quick and fast solutions, and unfortunately things that have been building and taking years in the making don't get resolved quickly. They take time. And so therapy is not about ganging up on and pathologizing the person who doesn't want to have sex and making them have sex, because that's not going to work. It's about actually taking the time to really figure out what is going on, what is the dynamic. Some people literally don't have any sex drive, and then that's a different issue we have to address. So if you're wondering how sex therapy will work or how it can work for you, it's highly customized, it's highly individualized. You can reach out to me for an initial assessment. It's a 15-minute session where we would talk about that and do some scoping and figure out how it would work for you. My details are below. Thank you.